that's where I've really grown. And people ask me like, what do you mean a doula is an advocate? Like, are you just, I'm like, I'm not speaking for you in the hospital. I'm exactly that. I'm offering that pause and I'm offering my perspective. But a lot of the advocating happens before you go into labor. So, I find a lot, clients find me because they want to experience an unmedicated birth most of the time, whether that's in the hospital or out of the hospital. And so I'm like, listen, you want an unmedicated hospital birth? It's going to be an uphill battle, but like, I'm ready to go. You just got to listen to what I say. Obviously, your intuition is number one. And if something is telling you deep inside of you, okay, something doesn't feel right, we are listening to that first and foremost. Like, mother's intuition is number one. But if you're feeling good and we do what I say, we're going to have an unmedicated birth. It's going to be awesome.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Allsmith, where we dive deep into the art of optimizing the mind, body, and the soul. Today, I'm fired up to introduce today's guest, Emily Stanwyck. She's a birth doula, a mentor, and a fitness coach specializing in supporting women through pregnancy, birth, postpartum recovery, and has an amazing background in high-level athletics, rowing at the University of San Diego, and competing in strongman nationals. Emily, thank you so much for carving out the space. I'm excited to connect with you today.
Thank you. Me
Welcome
too.
to Allsmith.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Today's going to be super cool. I
Yeah.
loved hearing your story offline and watching you light up, that I was like, man, I do this all the time. I need to press record sooner so we can grab all the beautiful, like, peaks and valleys of emotions that led us to connecting.
Me too. I'm excited.
So we talked briefly about two of our close friends, Caroline Burkle, Logan Galbrick, and some of the people that you connected with early on via CrossFit LA, Andy Petranik. I will say, like, despite the disruption within the CrossFit space within the last few years, it was such a breeding ground for community and connection, and it led us to where we are today. And so let's start the conversation there. Like, how did you find CrossFit, and what was its role in your life after rowing collegiately?
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Yeah. So I went to the University of San Diego, and they actually turned the varsity weight room into a CrossFit affiliate. So it was CrossFit USD, which was awesome. So people from the community would come on campus and take classes there. And after rowing, I did not row my senior year. I was really into drinking, obviously, being in San Diego, and in college. But my friend would go to CrossFit every Saturday morning. I'm like, you're crazy. But then I started going with her. She's like, no, we go to CrossFit and then we go out. I was like, oh, great. I started going with her and I was like, wow, because I had stopped rowing. I was doing like club volleyball on campus, but it wasn't intense or anything. I just fell in love with it. I loved being in the weight room. Rowing was my first introduction to actual weightlifting. I'm like, why didn't they do this for us in high school? Like, I could have been so much more strong in high school. Like, why didn't I start training till college? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I always loved being in the gym. I just had no education of how to be a trainer. I didn't really know how to one-on-one train people at the time. And so being in that class environment was fun. And like, that's why I loved sports growing up, because I had fun. I thrived. That's where I found true flow. I loved sports. And so from CrossFit USD, I'd go to class every so often. And then our mutual friend Logan also went to USD, and we connected through a mutual friend. We were actually never on campus at the same time. He was 1 year, we're 1 year off of being on campus at the same time. Mm-hmm. And his best friend was the CrossFit coach at USD. So we met, and then we became Facebook friends, because that's what you did back in the day. Then I messaged him. I was like, hey, I'm moving back to LA. I see you're doing CrossFit in LA. Like, what's the deal? I want to learn. I want to come. And he's like, you got to work here. It's the best CrossFit gym in the world, 9th CrossFit gym ever. This is the spot. He's like, it's in Santa Monica. I was like, perfect. I do not want to live in my parents' home forever. I want to move to Santa Monica. That's ideal. So
Where
that's how I
was
found CrossFit.
where was your parents' home at that
They
time?
live in Pasadena.
Okay,
So it was like a
very cool.
40-minute commute. I was on the west side. Like I would leave at like 5 or 6 in the morning, go to CrossFit for half the day, and then I worked at Lululemon for the other half of the day, and I'd drive home at like 8 o'clock and do that pretty much every day. It was so fun.
Wow.
It was so fun.
That's a cool time to look back to for sure. Cause it's like you're in the health and fitness field. You're connecting with like at that time, Lululemon started really taking off. Like
It
the
was so
girls in their
fun.
leggings,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
getting rid of the inseams, almost like sexualizing fitness apparel.
pretty
And then they
much.
started coming out with stuff for dudes and the
Hmm.
antimicrobial stuff associated with like the anti-stink. So then like athleisure started to blow up.
Yeah, it was a
That's
very
really
fun
cool.
time. It was a very fun time. Like CrossFit in 2011 to like 2015, 16 was just like such good memories. It was
It
so
was so
fun.
dope because
It
it
was
was like,
so fun.
especially after like high school and collegiate sports, you were craving that level of like locker room playtime. You
And
were
that
craving that
intensity.
level. Yeah, the
Yeah, it
intensity.
was
And
like
also it was
fun.
like 2 hours where you're doing like lifting, metcons, maybe skill work.
Yeah.
And then the rest, like your specific language was like half the day at CrossFit. Then I went
Then
over
I
to
worked.
work. So it's like there was all this community time in between and
Yeah.
banter and like that's super cool to look back at that time.
It was so fun. I do miss it. Like I really cherish that time. It was awesome.
I don't think it's ever coming back, sadly. I think
I
it's one of
know.
those things that's like people work out and they leave and they run to the next thing, or like it became so concentrated of like, as opposed to just lifting, skill work, Metcon, it was like 7 Metcons a day. You want to do this other workout? Or I
Right.
saw this thing from this person's program or this person's Instagram. And it was like, now you're just like doing chronic cardio and working out all the time to the point of
Yeah.
like elevated cortisol and misery, as opposed to
100%.
like the beauty of CrossFit early on, in my opinion, when you saw like a 5x5 back squat, it's
Right.
in the dash. What are you
Mhm.
doing between sets? Which now it's like, I need to mobilize, I need to activate my nervous system. And it's all this like scientific jargon that's just like
Mhm.
maximizing human potential, which has its place. But the
Yeah.
beauty was like, hey, I like
Chilling and
tried this
having
new
fun.
restaurant yesterday, or like
Yes.
bullshitting with people about their dating life or about this, that, and the other, or
Mhm.
last night's show that you watch or the game. And it's like, those things are really important to tribal culture. And it's kind of is lost now.
I'm with you. I've tried two gyms since being out here in Texas and just didn't really gel. Like I liked doing CrossFit, before I quit a couple years ago, which we can get into.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was such a different vibe. I was just like, ugh, it's not the same.
Yeah, for sure. What led to you leaving Lululemon and becoming a coach at Deuce?
Oh, yeah. I remember I loved working at Lululemon so much. I loved it. It was such I mean, I graduated with like a business degree. I didn't go to get my MBA or anything. I learned more about running a business at Lulu than I could have ever learned. And then, I mean, 10 times more when I worked at Deuce, running a small business. But I loved it. And I thought maybe I want to go corporate and I want to just like climb the Lululemon ladder because I love it so much. But I was like, I woke up one day and I'm like, Emily, you moved to the West Side to become a coach, not to work at Lululemon forever. Lululemon was just to make money, to figure out how to be a coach. So I like mentally made a switch. I told Logan, I was like, I'm all in, I'm ready. And it was a perfect timing. He was starting to open Deuce. I mean, it was like in the pre-open phase. I was in their coaches prep program and I just decided, I was like, I'm going all in coaching. And I quit Lululemon. I think I was coaching at Lululemon before I quit Lululemon
Mm.
because I was like very part-time coach. And right around the time I quit, there was like a full-time position available because the gym had been open maybe under a year at that point. And, they were making more money and ready to hire somebody. So that was me. I was kind of like gym manager, slash coaching a lot of classes. And I just made a decision and I told him like, I will quit as soon as you're ready, I'm ready, So it was an easy decision.
That's cool. What was that? What was that transition like? Like you're now leaving a space that maybe has this corporate realm, has benefits, has all these things to join a small business
Yeah.
that, you know, maybe has a little bit of uncertainty, but it lights your heart on fire. You're doing work of service to people.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting in the weeds and understanding their lives, their emotions, their headspace, learning about their work. And
Yeah.
it's a different skill set to understand how to manage large groups of people than it is to
Mm-hmm.
manage just retail.
Oh yeah. It's so different. Um, I mean, I really thrive in being with people. So there was stress to it because you had to like know how to coach. Like to me, that was the biggest stressor. It wasn't managing people, managing emotions. Like that to me just came very effortlessly. The stuff that gave me more stress was like literally doing the CrossFit part. Can I can I be a good coach? Am I a good coach? I don't know how to do a muscle up. How do I teach a muscle up? Right? And so it's just like building that confidence in training, which just comes with time and experience. So that I think was probably the most stressful in the very beginning because I was like, I'm kind of faking it, I'm brand new. But the being with people part and the managing people and the managing the gym, that came very naturally to me.
Just to play devil's advocate, I would argue, just because I've seen it time and time again, I would say that the people that have all of the skills and the ability to do 10 ring muscle ups and 15 bar muscle ups and handstand walk forever, they're actually relatively introverted and they struggle with managing people. They struggle with managing a business. So it's like zooming out now in observation and reflection of not only my past, but your past and everything in between. They're simply skills. And I think
Yes.
one is observational to the eye, that's like tangible and really exciting because of a social media culture of like, hey, look at my video. I did all these muscle ups, which is such an incredible accomplishment.
Totally.
I'm not knocking that by any means. Huge respect and kudos. However, you don't always see the emails that are going through. You're not always seeing management of billing. You're not always seeing allocation of class sessions and selling of retail and management of cleanliness within the space and fixing equipment that's broken and figuring out, if somebody wants to cancel their membership, but they're on a contractual agreement, and trying to figure out the peaks and valleys of running a business, which is
Mm-hmm.
not always tangible on social media. You can't always feel it or grasp it. But without that, the gates or the doors of the gym and the lights don't stay on and the doors close.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and Logan is an incredible business owner, and he definitely pushed us. And it was uncomfortable at times to deal with those uncomfortable member situations, um, but there was a lot of freedom to make mistakes, which was awesome, and I learned a lot, and I appreciated that. I have, there's one big mistake I made, and in hindsight, it was like a very innocent mistake, just with dealing with members, and she quit because of me. And Logan was like, you know what? Like, yeah, she quit because of this thing. She literally was not a big deal. But he's like, it's okay. Like, you thought you thought you did the right thing. I'm not mad at you. It's just like now you know how to deal with something like this. And so I appreciated that. And there was a lot of learning. And
Let's unpack that a little bit. And like, you don't have to use names or specificity, but
oh
here's
yeah,
why.
no.
I think so many business owners go through that. And it's like, okay, like if you had this situation and it was a medical bill or it was some sort of rent payment or an SDG&E bill or a bill associated with your water or a car payment, after you sign that contract, like it's not negotiable anymore. And like I had this conversation yesterday with Dr. Sean Baker around there's so much psychological buy-in and cliche associated with modern medicine, and it's so respected because of the doctor in front of names and the letters that come after names. That's not even a question of negotiation, and I would categorize that as reactive medicine. But when you come over
Mm-hmm.
here to preventative medicine, it's like you have people that love and care. Not everybody has the education or, certain things, but they have the care for the most part. And obviously, like any field, you have bad doctors, bad coaches, bad lawyers. like bad management, like that's going to exist in every field known to man. What I want to seek to understand is, as far as like a business operation, why do people believe it to be okay to disrespect the business owners of preventative medicine, but not disrespect the business owners of reactive medicine? Why does one weigh more than the other? And I think that's a social dynamic that we need to change that conversation.
I mean, it's an amazing question. And like I had a conversation with my dad recently, and he's struggled with his health for his whole life. He's been overweight as long as I've known him, my whole life. And he was telling me he's managing his blood sugar with a continuous glucose monitor. I'm like, amazing. Those are so cool. I do a ton of consultations with pregnant women for blood sugar management. Um, he's telling me, oh, as long as my blood sugar stays in the 140s, 150s, I'm good. And my jaw dropped. I don't know if you know much about blood sugar, but that is like extremely high. And I was like, oh my God, wait, what? Dad, 140, 150? That's crazy. That's so high.
It's like right after drinking orange juice.
It's like right after having like an ice cream party.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is crazy high. And he's like, Emily, that's like normal. That is like normal blood sugar. I'm like, says who? He says, American Diabetes Association. I was like, oh
Oh,
boy, here
geez.
we go. Okay. So I said, so I'm trying to educate him from a really like gentle place, because my dad gets really triggered when I try to talk to him about health stuff, because he's like very Western.
It has to be like suggestive in order for it to land and be received.
Right. So I'm like, you know, 140s, 150s is like, you're not diabetic yet, but that's not by any means any sort of anywhere near optimal health. Like that is a red flag to me. Like that's not good. He got like, he was like visibly getting red, like he was all flushed and heated. I was like, you're looking at me like I'm not qualified to have this conversation with you just because I haven't gone to medical school, because I don't have letters next to my name. I've been in the fitness, the wellness, the nutrition world for 15 years. I know what I'm talking about. And people discount people like me, potentially people like you. We're just coaches. We're fitness coaches. It's like, we've been obsessed with optimizing our body so much and for so long, that we should be taken just as seriously as doctors. But because we didn't go to school for freaking diabetes management, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, good luck. The
Well, here's the other
prevention.
thing. Like when you look at, let's just use politics as an example. The previous leader prior to RFK Jr. was a woman that is incredibly overweight, obese, and, points to all this medical research. Okay, fine. But who's funding all that medical research? Who's in somebody's pocket? Who's manipulating the data? Because there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in order to move the needle in the right direction, it's not just about a blood test. Like you do need to look in the mirror. Like you can't lie about belly fat. Oh, I'm just this way because of genetics. It's like, no, you're that way because you make bad choices. And if we just started there and had the honest conversation of like, hold yourself to your word, eat protein first. If you're using a blood glucose monitor, I guarantee if you're eating protein first, you're not going to get a huge blood sugar spike.
No.
As if you smash like a banana or something like that, which can be useful for competitive athletes. I'm not demonizing carbohydrates. However, just pay the fuck attention and
It's
listen
like
to people.
the idea of bioindividuality doesn't exist in Western medicine. It's like blanket statements.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people like us who care a little bit more, we have big problems. It's like, you should be listening to us. You should take us seriously. Do I think blood tests are right for everybody? No. Like, and pregnant woman versus man, blood sugar management is different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we have to have some nuance, and we have to be living in a world where someone like you and I are taken seriously. It's so funny because on Instagram, I'm very open and I talk a lot about health and medicine. And, from a standpoint of like, this is my observation as like a normal person who cares. Like I'm not a doctor, But people will text me and be like, hey, my kid has 104 fever and this happened, this happened, this happened. Like, what should I do next? I'm like, I'm so stoked that you think so highly of me to ask me a specific health question about your 4-year-old, but I am not a pediatrician. I don't know how to answer that. But it's like when you are woken up to people in the wellness world who are actually reading different things and actually looking at evidence-based studies, um, they're taken very seriously. They don't need to have any letters next to their names.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really interesting place to be because across the board from, a macro view, we just get knocked down and looked at as stupid when we are the people who are helping prevent major medical issues.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I really do think it's a psychological problem in the sense
Yeah.
of, and what I mean by that is if you go to medical school, you already have a level of respect. It's created expectations up front that you do not have access to me. You need to make an appointment. You need to be on time to that appointment. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next one. You're going to have to reschedule.
Mm-hmm.
But for a fitness coach, for a consult, it's okay to be a little bit late. It's okay to kind of disrespect their time. You don't take into consideration how much access you have to them. Most fitness people are either on a Slack channel or have some sort of WhatsApp or Instagram, or they give out their personal phone number. When you look at the medical system, I talked with Dr. Sean Baker yesterday about this. I've talked to numerous other doctors about this. It's roughly, on average, 7 minutes that you have between patient and doctor. A lot of that intake information for the doctor is based on a bullshit questionnaire of like, how do you feel, 0 to 10? Like, give me a number. And it's maybe real data, maybe fake data, but it's like when somebody comes in to see me at a fitness space or for a consult or for a sauna and ice or a breathwork session, I can feel their energy.
You're
I
giving
can
them
feel if they're
your all.
bullshitting. I can see
Mm-hmm.
their body language. I can hear the tone of voice. I can watch their eye contact and see if it's dancing. Like there's so many different variables to take in. And if I see you 2+ days a week, the amount of animalistic biological data that I'm taking in is enormous. And
Oh
maybe
yeah.
it's not necessarily documented and quantifiable and all
Sure.
scientific, but it is giving a shit about this human and wanting to help support them in their journey towards peak expression. But unfortunately, going back to where we started this little rant and tangent, that's not observed by the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not respected by the consumer. Like fitness is viewed as a luxury. Oh, I'm spending $500 a month on fitness. That's too expensive. I need to cut that. But if I need to pay, a $500 copay for elbow surgery, it's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck does that make sense? And why are people not asking these questions? Why aren't
Yeah.
they saying, oh, that's too expensive for the copay? Let me explore other options, maybe like a PRP or a stem cell, or let's try to do physical therapy or play around with other modalities and just ask better questions. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying that these people are necessarily wrong, but I am saying that like you should ask yourself, why does this over here weigh so much more than this when these people barely know your name? They just see it on a chart that they were handed by a nurse or physician assistant.
Oh yeah. And it's, the proof is in the paper. CrossFit coaches are not rolling in dough unless they are crushing it on TikTok or YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like why, like we should be making well into the 6 figures because we are transforming people's lives every single day. And, part of being a coach is being a therapist as well. You are really there for them and you are invested in their whole body, heart, and mind. You want them to win. And yes, not everyone is as gung-ho about it as maybe you are for them, but there's a lot that goes into being a coach that is totally overlooked and not even known, until you can really experience it. Like you have a client come up to you and be like, you changed my life because of XYZ. And when that happens, it feels incredible. But it's just not seen as important as medical professionals. And like you said, like the 7-minute visits is so real. And that's how it is in the birth world too, which is insane because you're growing a new human and you go to your OB and you have a 7-minute visit. They weigh you, they do an ultrasound. I don't even know what happens. I never went to an OB when I was pregnant, but but the average OB appointment is 7 minutes. And so as a doula and as a trainer, a lot of my doula clients in LA came from Deuce because I was training them. I got to see them 2-3 times a week and understand, like, know them throughout their pregnancy. I'm like, I know so much more that's going on with you than your OB does, someone who's like taking care of you and your baby's lives. Why don't you have this relationship with your doctor? Obviously, their volume is so high, they don't have the time, but like, that's a problem.
Why is that a
They're just as
justifiable
assist,
excuse is my
right?
question, right?
Like,
Like
it's
I think
crazy.
asking that question is totally valid. Like, oh, you want to monetize, you went to school to play within the game of capitalism and educational reform to memorize said things. But let's even take a step further. Let's look at continuing education. You've gone to so much school to gain the letters pre or post your name that now you have these expectations to provide
Mm-hmm.
a service based on 8 or 12-hour shifts, which are very rigorous shifts. Like,
Mm-hmm.
freaking shout out to our medical practitioners. Like, they work
Oh
their
yeah.
asses off, not to mention the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that looms over their head as far as documentation, legalities, the fear of medical
Oh yeah.
malpractice, the suing.
Totally.
They do take on a lot of risk. So this is not to
Yes.
mitigate that space at all.
Completely.
Because there's also a lot of risk on the other side of, like you said, you lose clients very quickly. Maybe it's not a short term, smash. It's a couple $100, but long term, when you look at the life expectancy of that patient or that client, you're losing a lot.
Yeah.
But the big question becomes, okay, if you're participating in the game of higher level education in order to play this role and do the thing, most people are well into the six figures of medical debt as far as student
Mm-hmm.
loans. So then as a byproduct, you're learning all these things about big pharma. You're learning all these things in medical school. We all know that science and education continue to be evolutionized. They continue to have periodization and evolve. As a byproduct, though, you're such a slave to the system, paying off that student debt and trying to satisfy patient quotas, that you're not actually participating in continuing education, especially when you come home and you need to take care of you. You might have a family, you might have kids, you might have dogs, you might have a
Mm-hmm.
home. How are you supposed to continue your education versus a coach is so obsessed with the practice and the field and they're in it every day that they have no choice but to practice the art of continuing education because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's literally a part of the day to day.
Yes.
And so that also raises the eyebrows of like, okay, are you working with practitioners that seemingly have outdated education and data? That's
Mm-hmm.
worth a conversation. I'm not saying it's
Oh
right or
yeah.
wrong. I'm not saying everybody falls into that blanket statement, but it is something to tinker with.
The behind the times is so prevalent in maternity care when it comes to modern obstetrics. It's kind of scary. And it's like, where do we even start with that continuing education? Like, where do we have that? When is there time for even starting the conversation? It should start in medical school, but it doesn't because they're just steamrolling, right? We got to do the curriculum and we got to teach you everything you need to know so that you know how to do surgery and you know how to do IVs. And like, yeah, there is life-saving care that is extremely important. Obviously, if you're working in a hospital, you need to have life-saving care. And that is like, I'm so grateful for that. But there's no room for optimizing. There's no room for innovating. There's no room for pivoting because there's so much they need to learn in order to
Mm-hmm.
just do the bare minimum, which is save lives. And they're not even very good at that. And again, I'm not knocking it, but we just have a really bad maternal statistics in this country. So it's very challenging. And then, my role as like a birth educator or, a coach, when I'm with pregnant women in my class this morning, we talk about birth education stuff and they're just like, how come we don't learn this from our doctors? I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know. They
I
don't
mean,
have
it
time.
might even be one of the sole reasons why we're here, right? To love,
For
to
real.
learn, and to reproduce. And
Yeah.
so, how did you find your way? How did you navigate going from being a high level fitness coach into becoming a birth educator and a doula?
Yeah. So when I was at Deuce, I met Lindsay Matthews. Her new last name is Cantu, and she started a company called BirthFit, and they do prenatal and postpartum training, online training. Really awesome. And then it's just like a lot of fringe education, I should say, on Instagram and stuff. But anyway, we worked together at Deuce, and so I would just learn from her on the daily and watch her train pregnant postpartum women. She got me training pregnant postpartum women. I loved it. I loved being around babies. It was just so fun. And she was like, "You should be a doula." And I was like, "What's that?" And she said, "It is basically like a birth coach. You go to births and you help them. It's kind of like, for lack of a better description, you're kind of like mothering the mother. You're really putting your energy and love into helping them have basically the best possible birth outcome. But you are a non-medical role." And I was like, "That's amazing. I don't want the liability." And that's a real thing. That medical liability is so real. And like every time I think about becoming a midwife, I was like, ugh, I don't want the licensure. I don't want the liability. I'm not for that right now. But doula is a non-medical role. It's basically like a birth coach. And I could get into like the nitty-gritty of it, but that's basically all you need to know.
Get into it a little bit. I want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's you are providing a safe space in the birth space, and you are an advocate. You are constant encouragement, especially for new dads who have never gone through labor before. You're seeing your wife or your partner or your girlfriend in a very new light, and it might be a little scary to observe. As a dad who's a protector, that is the natural male instinct, is protection, and they see your woman in a world of pain, you're like, this feels like an emergency and we should probably call 911 right now. And as the doula, I'm like, this is good. This is what we want. So you're really holding that space for both of them so that dad can be that loving protector and that hand holder and that just strong presence and not get nervous or not show nerves, I should say. And then the doula is really just, it is just constant encouragement. I'm like literally holding hands being like, I know this sucks. Like, trust me, I know this sucks. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. This is what we want. You're doing great. Constant. And then at the hospital, if it's a hospital birth, you are really in an advocate role because a lot of stuff can happen at the hospital that maybe you're unaware of, especially in labor when you're in your most vulnerable state. There's going to say things like, "Oh, we got to start XYZ now because of this, that, or the other thing. We need to start this medication because this isn't happening." It's like, well, let's just pause. We don't need to start, and I'm kind of just offering pause in the hospital room. Hey, let us talk about that for a second before we just like start her on some drugs. She has no idea what they are, right? So you're in an educational role, you're in an advocate role, and you're just like another support system in the birth space. It's
Does that
awesome.
create tension at all between you and like the nurses or the healthcare practitioners?
Yes. And I should say I'm pretty good at not being confrontational in the hospital space. I don't like to cause more stress, but I've heard of providers like not liking doulas because they can be confrontational. So it's funny. I'm quite confrontational online, but when I'm a doula, I'm very not. I'm just more of an observer, and I'm like, she just said this, like if it were me, I would do this. And I'm like kind of whispering in the dad's ear, like, no, we're not going to do that, and here's why.
I love how confident you say that though, which I think gives reassurance to the husband in that moment.
Yeah. And, finding a doula who aligns with you is super important because there's highly medicalized doulas. And then there's people like me who like understand the medical system, but I'm super not into all the drugs and interventions we do in the hospital system when it comes to birth. So I really like my doula work really elevated when I became a mom. I was a doula for 4 years before I became a mom, and it was great. I learned a lot, but I didn't have that empathy, right? Because I hadn't experienced it. And I just there are some women who can really tap into that having never gone through birth before. I thought I could. And then when I had a baby, I was like, exploded. I was like, now I know exactly what you're feeling. Now I know exactly what to say in those moments of desperation or, I learn something every single time I go to a birth, and I'm constantly being challenged and surprised. But my confidence and my ability to speak with so much sureness has come just from being a mom and going through my own experiences. Like now having had 3 kids, um, it feels really good because I have 3 different experiences. I have 3 different children, and we've gone through so many iterations of parenting and raising babies that I'm just like, you don't have to take my advice, but I'm going to tell you exactly
Yeah.
what I think. I'm not afraid
Which I
anymore.
think is so great. It's like sharing of your experience, which comes
Yeah.
off suggestive and being like, hey, I have 3 case studies now. 3 case
Yes.
studies is better than, just psychological studies that may or may not have
Yes.
actually taken place. How was it early on in your practice of being a doula prior to being a mom? Did you navigate levels of imposter syndrome and maybe like
Oh, yeah.
unsureness? The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was, and like I said, I think we said this when we were off, not recording, but my first home birth was my first baby, like me giving birth. I didn't attend any out of hospital births until I gave birth myself. And so I was in hospitals. And when you are not educated, like nurse or doctor, right? And you're in the hospital system, it is very, very easy to feel like inferior.
Mm-hmm.
It makes so much sense why women are coerced into things in the hospital in labor, because they're like, I don't know what's happening. You know what's happening. So if you tell me we need to start this, obviously we need to start that. If we need to start Pitocin or we need to do a C-section right now because you think something's wrong, I have no idea what's going on. And so as a new doula, I very much fell in line with that because I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I really didn't know that much about all the drugs back then. And I didn't feel confident enough to interfere with someone's birth in that way. You know what I mean? To be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I did not have that confidence. And that rarely happens to me at hospital births. Typically, if someone wants to start a drug now, like, hey, we need to start Pitocin, which is a drug that stimulates contractions, they look to me first. And I'll say, you know what, if I were you, you've been in labor for such a long time, like I would do this too. And that lets them feel better. It's
What I
usually
love
the other.
about that, Emily, is that like you're giving agency and creating a softer tone. Like I feel like sometimes, and this is not a disrespect to the medical practitioner or the nurse, it's more so like they're speaking black and white or gray. That's kind
Oh
of
yeah.
just like very transactional of like, oh, here's what we're seeing. Here are the signs and symptoms. Here's what we need to do. And it's very much like, we need to start this thing now. And the way that's
Mm.
observed and received from the mother and the father is relatively panicky, maybe not necessarily reassuring, not calming on the nervous system. You're like, oh wow, you've seen this before. Like, okay, sure. But those are
Mm-hmm.
potentially irreversible decisions.
Yes.
And I like that you do, I call it the power of the pause, which is like, okay, I'm observing the entirety of the situation. You're in it, but you're also a little bit removed where you can make like logical, clear decisions.
Yeah.
And then you can be like, okay, the nurse is suggesting this. I think you can actually go a little bit longer before taking that based on my observation so far. Or, you know what? I think the suggestion by the nurse or the doctor is actually spot on. I would
Yeah.
probably integrate this if you think it is right. It's not like you're constantly a contrarian, but I think
Correct.
holding that space and creating that container can be really valuable.
Oh, it's huge. And that's where I've really grown. And people ask me like, what do you mean a doula is an advocate? Like, are you just I'm like, I'm not speaking for you in the hospital. I'm exactly that. I'm offering that pause and I'm offering my perspective. But a lot of the advocating happens before you go into labor. So, I find a lot, clients find me because they want to experience an unmedicated birth most of the time, whether that's in the hospital or out of the hospital. And so I'm like, listen, you want an unmedicated hospital birth? It's going to be an uphill battle, but like, I'm ready to go. You just got to listen to what I say. Obviously, your intuition is number one. And if something is telling you deep inside of you, okay, something doesn't feel right, we are listening to that first and foremost. Like, mother's intuition is number one. But if you're feeling good and we do what I say, we're going to have an unmedicated birth. It's going to be awesome. Because it is very much like you said, it's like they're speaking in this urgency that comes off as emergency way too often. And you have to think like hospital attendees, OBs, and labor and delivery nurses are trained in medicalized birth. They are not trained in physiological birth, which is just, we are mammals, we do our thing. We don't need much help. They're trained in medicalized birth. So if they're hearing you moaning and being really loud, like when I give birth, like I'm really loud, that is uncomfortable to them. And they're like, I don't like this, something's wrong. And so I'm kind of there to be like, forget about that, nurse. You're making her nervous, but your noises are beautiful. This is exactly what we want to hear, right? And I try to lighten the mood and make it like not urgent / emergency feeling, like this is
Allowing
wrong, this is
people to
good.
be human and not
Yeah,
necessarily allowing the volume or the animalistic experience to then trigger an emergency response.
exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah,
What are your
so
thoughts on the modern birth revolution and like how the current medical system approaches birth versus the extreme power of like an informed, intentional home birth experience?
yeah.
Like, how does one make the choice between the two? And what do women need to kind of reclaim the strength to make that powerful choice?
Oh, so good. Yeah, it's interesting. When I learned about home birth, it wasn't, I don't even remember being there, like there being like a aha moment, like, oh my God, home birth. Wow. It was just kind of like, that sounds amazing. I think I want to do that. Like, that was that. I don't want to be in a hospital. If I had to, obviously I'd go if it required life-saving care. Thank God hospitals exist, but that doesn't feel like the place I want to be. And I just had this like super chill feeling with it. I was just like, that sounds like me. That sounds like what I want to do. But something that I think that all women need to really step into if they're curious about home birth. So all three of my babies were born at home, and it was fantastic every time. It was incredible, and I'm so grateful I get to share 3 positive birth stories.
That's cool.
Yeah, birth in America got in the hospital, or I should say, moved into the hospital in 1913 or 14. The first hospital birth was in one of those years. Okay, so 110 years ago was the first hospital birth in America. That's not a long time
Mm-hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, right? Up until then, or prior to 1910, everybody was born out of hospital without a medical doctor. Your entire maternal line, aside from the last few generations, was born out of hospital. Like, duh. Think about that for a second. You are here because of home birth. You're here because of home birth. I'm here because of home birth. We are all here because of home birth. How rad is that? Our medical industrial complex started in 1913. 1910 was when the I should say propaganda started, right around then, where they deemed midwives as unclean and uneducated. They didn't have medical school. They didn't have numbers next to their, or letters next to their names. And there was a large marketing campaign for Rockefeller Medicine to bring affluent women into the hospital. It was seen as clean, sanitary. You are in a place of education and safety. And this is the new thing to do. Cool. I mean, we love medical innovation, right? Like, I think medical innovation is great. you know, like amputees can walk again because of medical innovation. We have created amazing medical devices for innovation. But when you are completely altering the very nature of an experience and medicalizing it, we got a big problem. So coming back to what you originally asked, like, just go back to your why. Like, why do you, like, for me, like, I wanted to experience the pain of labor. I wanted to. And I feel like part of that was like my competitive athletic nature. I was like, just want to feel it. Like, yes, I want to back squat
That's
300.
courageous and brave.
Yeah. I just was like, you know, when I competed in strongman, I was lifting like insane weight. And like, I pushed my body to the absolute limit. And I was like, if I can do that, I can give birth. I want to feel it. Like, and it's funny now because whenever I do ice baths, I'm like, Emily, you gave birth unmedicated. You can get in this damn ice bath. Like, I hate ice baths. But it's like, it's that peak human expression. It's that potential. Like, I want to meet it. I want to feel it. Like, that is our, and honestly, giving birth is truly, I think, the last rite of passage that exists for humans. Like, men don't really have rite of passage in culture, our American culture anymore, which is, I think, a huge problem in America and men right now.
Totally. What do you mean by
right?
that? Unpack that a little bit for people to better understand.
That there's no rite of passage for men.
Mm-hmm.
Think of tribal, like my husband and I are watching Vikings right now. Have you seen that show?
I love Vikings. It's so good.
It's so good. So like when
Ragnar,
when Ragnar's boys turn like 10 and 12, he's like, you're coming with me to England. We're going to raid. You know, it's like, you're a man now. Like, let's go. Let's fight. Let's just send it, right? It is so in the nature of men to just unleash that energy, right? Like, I see it in my two boys. Like, my 6-year-old, if he could be a Viking and go raid right now, he would do it. Like, that is his energy. He's just such a boy. And in other cultures, I listened to this amazing podcast, I don't remember when, in the last year, of like this man who was invited to this tribe. And he was like the first white man to ever witness this very intimate tribe. And he witnessed the walking on hot coals ceremony. And he said it was just like, he was like, I was crying the whole time. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, and it changed his life, you know, because he saw that intense rite of passage for boys and men. And I don't know if women did that also. I can't remember, but like, we don't have anything that forces you into such intense discomfort where you have to adapt every second of every moment of that experience. Like, we don't go to war like we used to. Like, men don't like get their swords and shields and they're just like, I'm ready to die for this. I'm ready. Like, I don't want to die, but I'm ready. And birth, you go there. Like, you really go there. And it's, I mean, I had a very crazy experience in my first birth where it was so painful. And I'm grateful. Like, looking back, I don't have any trauma associated with it, which is great. But I had a thought in my head, like, if I die right now, at least this will be over. Like, I was there. I was at my limit of like, I can't mentally handle this for much longer. Like, if I die, at least this ends. It was crazy. But I wasn't like, I'm going to die. It wasn't like, I feel like I'm dying. It wasn't, somebody end it now. It wasn't like that. It was just like, I was at my limit, you know? And that is a very cool place to get to if you have that relationship with intensity. And we do not, as a culture in America. We are soft.
Yeah, we're addicted to the comfort crisis for sure. What I'm curious though about that is like the proactive work that you've done mentally. You know, you obviously have a high level rowing background. Then you got into strongman activity and competitiveness. You were fostering and sharpening that mental sword through lifetime reps.
Yeah.
And an extreme intensity. I mean, picking up an Atlas stone and the pelvic floor and understanding bracing. that gives you a lot of access to tools in your toolbox that maybe other women don't have.
100%.
And so like when they get to that edge where you might be like, whoa, this is what it feels like to be alive. This is freaking cool. This is really uncomfortable. I want it to be over, but like I know that what I'm capable of because I've visited this place before. For some
Yes.
women, they don't touch on that. And so then when
Such
they
a
do
good
to get to
point.
that moment, it's like, give me the epidural, give me the C-section, give me the medication, because they don't have access. There's obviously levels to the game of pain tolerance. How do you kind of navigate that education and
Yes.
use suggestive coaching, curiosity, and combine that with like stern truth, but
Yeah.
also empathy and compassion?
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. So many women would come to me and be like, well, of course you had an unmedicated birth. Like, you're crazy at the gym. And I'm just like, yeah, on one hand, I know my pain threshold when it comes to fitness. But on the other hand, like, that is a very masculine environment. Like, it's not normal for women to be like strong men. Like, that's just, I don't think that's normal. Um, I think it's very possible. Like, I don't think we shouldn't, but it's not common. Um, but women have been giving birth unmedicated out of hospital since the dawn of time. You don't need to have tapped into that masculine energy. Like, that is very masculine energy. And I loved it. And I find myself like still like cursing like a sailor everywhere I go because of being in the yard with everyone at Deuce, just like talking mad shit all day long. But like, I had to really step away from that like masculine bro energy and really, how do I relate this? How do I make this tangible for women who don't do that? Right. And it's just what I said when I started. Like, women have been doing this since the dawn of time. This is our God given gift. This is our gift. Every woman, I believe in every woman's ability to go there, go to the edge. I think the problem is we have such a culture of fear around it. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts like crazy. It's indescribable. But there's no reason to be scared. And I think that's what I try and get across to all the women that I work with. It's like, you have nothing to be afraid of. I understand not wanting to be in pain. I was the most scared of the pain for my third birth because I was like, dude, I've already done this twice. Like, I don't want to do it again. It hurts so bad. I do not want to do this again.
Totally. It's like for our CrossFitters that are listening, it's like going to that place, doing Fran a few times, and then
Yes. And
Fran's
then
on the
trying to,
whiteboard, and you're just like, oh, I know what this is going to
like, you
feel
have the
like.
most anxiety when you know what you have to do to do it.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful space where ignorance is a bliss. Because
Oh,
you're like,
yeah.
oh, I'm gonna go play. I don't really know what to expect. But when you
Oh,
know
like
what to expect, you're like, fuck, I'm like a naked body rolling down a mountain of cactuses.
yes. I tell every first time mom, I'm like, live in this ignorance, this bliss. Like, just tell yourself it's going to be amazing because why would you, like, it's, live in fantasy world, live in fantasy world for this birth. Um, but what I really try to help women understand is like the pain is not coming from out there. No one's hurting you. And then this is assuming no one's hurting you, like at a hospital, or you don't have needles in your arms or things like that that can trigger stress. If everything's perfect, no one's hurting you. Everyone on your team should be like loving on you. Everyone's going to be like, I remember just being in a world of pain in my first birth and like opening my eyes after a contraction. And my midwives are like, you're doing so amazing. I'm just like, okay, we are having two very different experiences. This is fucking awful. And you guys are smiling at me. Like, we're not calling 911, which I really feel like we should call 911 right now because this is a nightmare. And but the pain is within you. So it's like, having had athletic background is really amazing tool for birth because we have the mindset practices around pushing ourselves. Right. So it's not a performance. Birth is not a performance. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to PR birth, but it's all mental. It's like shifting your mindset to pain and suffering, shifting your mindset from pain and suffering to pain with a purpose. Like, every contraction is getting you closer to meeting your baby. it's amazing. It's wonderful. We should celebrate every contraction. It feels awful. Some women don't experience it as awful pain. And, I don't want to scare anyone who's listening who's never given birth. I just don't sugarcoat it in case someone comes to me like, you didn't tell me it was like that.
Mhm.
Um, but we have intense fear around it, and women just being like, oh, don't be a hero, just get the drugs. It's like, I'm literally not trying to be a hero. I just want to do what the body's designed to do. And I
Yeah, for
believe that I
sure.
can. I believe that I can. So it's having that belief in yourself. And something that I would, notice all the time too is being at the gym and working really hard and lifting a lot. And then I meet these like Venice Beach yoga ladies, and they're all like, we had home births. It was great. And I'm like, okay, you've never lifted a weight in your life. And you had an amazing experience. It's like, that is the feminine energy. That is the
Hmm.
flow that is required for birth. It's like, you don't need to tap into your inner animal when it comes to the gym. You need to tap into your inner animal that can just roar and come out, and
Hmm.
there's no inhibitions, there's no fear. It's
Yeah.
not a masculine weightlifting thing, it's like a primal thing, and we
Yeah.
all have that.
I love the
We
way you
just
described that.
Yeah.
It just creates a better understanding based on like societal limitations and just like the
Mhm.
subject matter preconceived notions. And what I'm curious about, Emily, is the strength that is required for pregnancy, but also life in the postpartum sphere, and like
Mhm.
really busting the myth that like, oh, you should just take it easy. Like, how can movement and lifting and breath work really prepare the body for birth and everything beyond? Because maybe some
Oh
women do
yeah.
need to take it easy and they can listen to that level of intuition, or there's some days of that and then some days of getting after it and whatever activity lights their heart on fire that they've done up
Mhm.
until that moment. But I feel like that's like the default. And I feel like there's probably different protocols for different women.
Oh, 100%. um Moving your body is the most important thing you can do for healthy pregnancy and postpartum. I should say moving and nourishing your body, because food to me is the second. They're the same. Movement and nutrition are number one. Best thing you can do is optimizing those things in the preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum phase. So important. Um, I always tell women, like, listen, I love strength training. You don't need to strength train if you don't love it. You just need to move your body. Do something, like you said, that lights you up, that gets you out the door and gets you moving. If that's going on a walk every day, fantastic. I know
Mhm.
women who are athletes and all they want to do during the pregnancy is go on a walk every day. I'm like, I love that for you. Just do that. Just go on a walk.
Hmm.
Better than sitting on your couch all day long. Um, so like I lifted very heavy in my first pregnancy. I kept it, I toned it down, but like normal people would be like, you're crazy. For me, it wasn't crazy. Postpartum, my body was jacked up. And that was just because of I went from strongman to kind of toning it down to pregnancy, and my back just was lit up because when you're pregnant, your pelvis tilts forward. My erectors were just super tight my whole pregnancy because my belly was so big, my pelvis is tilted forward. I was like, whoa, I'm not lifting heavy in between these next, baby one and two, because like I need my back to chill out a little bit. So second pregnancy was way more mellow. I did lots of kettlebells, lunges, body weight stuff, and empty barbell work and airdyne. And I loved it. And I would go on long walks with my son because he is a little wild man. And so we'd go on long walks to tire him out. Um, and third pregnancy, my baby's 8 months old now. So I was pregnant for most of 2020, half of 2023, half of 2024. Um, I had so much discomfort in my pelvis. And it was just like, I need to just chill. And sometimes it's just like any aches and pains in pregnancy just get subsequently worse each pregnancy, for whatever reason. I did all the things right in my postpartum to recover, but I felt terrible, and movement was not enjoyable at all, even going on walks. So I took it super easy. I still moved my body. I did very light weights, super light kettlebells, body weight workouts, but it was like twice a week. That's it.
Hmm.
And I felt fine. I was just like, I'm in pain and my pelvis hurts so bad. It's just, and my baby he was huge. So
What did he weigh?
He weighed 9 pounds, 9 ounces.
Wow.
Yeah, he was big. I'm
That's
really
so cool.
tall, so it's to be expected. All my babies have been big, but like he was my biggest baby. So my belly was enormous.
Yeah.
And it was just uncomfortable.
How'd you
But
manage like the headspace around comparison to your previous birth experiences, and also as social media culture has evolved and you've been a doula for some time now, you've seen other people's experiences. There's the psychology and also the nutrition of what you watch on social media and how that
mm-hmm.
infiltrates your headspace and can be like, oh well, why is she able to do it like this and I'm unable to do that? And obviously there's so many variables, but how did you manage that in relation to all the other things that come up with food and the scale
Mm-hmm.
and the mirror
Oh
and,
yeah.
you know, fitting within this mold of like, I want to be strong, but I also want to be sexy and I also want all these other things?
Oh yeah. It's hard. I mean, I've had very good body image and self-confidence for most of my adult life after college, and I think rowing really helped with that. It helped me see my athletic potential and be like, "Oh, I can if I put my mind to something, I can really do it." Um, and when it comes to being pregnant, it's hard. Gaining weight is hard. I'm like 6'1", and so I'm like pushing 230 when I'm fully cooked, and it's terrible. And my feet hurt. It's awful. And I'm like, I just look so big. But at the same time, like, I don't have any I have like, oh my God, it's going to take me forever to get back. But having been in this world for so long, it's not challenging for me to dial it in. I think it's challenging for a lot of people because we live in a comfort obsessed world and a fast food obsessed world. And I don't even mean McDonald's, like just quick and easy meals that you're not really thinking about, you're not really conscious to, you're not maybe necessarily cooking for yourself, or you have to be hyper diligent in your recovery if you want to feel amazing. Now, some women just naturally feel amazing and they're 50 pounds overweight postpartum, but they're so happy because they had an amazing birth experience and their breastfeeding is going great and their baby is so cute and their husband's like, I don't care, you look amazing, I'm so happy too. I love that for anybody. Do I think women should strive for optimal health postpartum? Of course. Am I going to judge you because you're still a little overweight after pregnancy? No, you just had a baby. Who has time to work out consistently when you have a newborn? No one. It's really just managing your expectations. So for me, now that I'm on my third baby, both previous babies, I'm like by 1 year postpartum, I'm pretty much back. And it's funny because I hit the 8-month mark with my baby last month, and I was like, we're getting there. I feel good now. And like by 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, I'm like fitting into my clothes. I'm like, okay, great. I really haven't done anything that special in these 8 months. I work out twice a week. My husband got me a rower for Christmas, which has been awesome. So I'm back on the rower, which is cool. But it's managing your expectations. It's managing what's in your control. Like I have a client and she's like, it's so hard for me to not snack on crackers and chips. She's like, because I buy crackers and chips for my son. I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you what to do. You can do it or not. You quit buying chips for your son. Oh, but he loves them. Okay, well, sorry. Figure out something else. My kids love crackers and chips. We don't buy them that because I eat them all. Like, I know, like, I'm not really, it's not hard for me to dial it in. It's really hard for a lot of people to
Well, what you're saying there,
do
which
that.
is so true, is compliance is science, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to have consistency, you need convenience. And part of convenience is you want to conveniently not have access to the bad foods. And so just don't have them in your house. If you're going to
It's
have
really
something
simple.
bad, make it where like you have to go out and you're going to indulge on this eating out
Mm-hmm.
experience with family, friends, or loved ones. And then you're going to have an experience rather than like a closet
Yes.
eating experience of like, oh my gosh, nobody's looking, I'm going to get away with this. But then you hate yourself
Mm-hmm.
in the morning.
100%.
And so
And
I think that's huge. I actually love the tough love that you provide within what you're describing is your coaching experience, because it's so truthful and it's
yeah.
not bullshit, which I think is what we're seeing in coaching. Like, oh, you can still eat all the bad things and still get jacked or still get ripped. It's like, no, you
Uh,
can't. You can
Not if you're
actually do it on
anorexic, maybe.
occasion. Yeah, you can do it on
Yeah.
occasion, but that's because you've built the buffers of discipline and consistency prior to that moment, not because you're inadequate with your discipline on the day to day.
And I tell my husband, like, I mean, we are so disciplined with our food and it's awesome. We feel like we have food freedom. If we go on vacation, we want to go crazy on food for 2 days and eat all the bad stuff, we can. And it doesn't move the needle at all. We feel like crap, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't move the needle at all. I'm like, if I'm 45 and I'm getting fat, you better tell me. He's like, don't worry, I will. I'm like, okay, good. I won't be offended. I want you to keep me in check in a positive way. Like, I want to feel good for a long time. Like, you got to have people on your team who are helping you out. This one woman recently is like, and part of, okay, the other thing where, I'm really good at tough love and I really believe in it. But on the other hand, postpartum is so vulnerable and you're so sensitive and it's highly emotional. The hormone fluctuation is crazy. And it's by design. Your brain literally changes. Your brain is shifting into like mega protective mode because you have this tiny baby who you are completely responsible for now. And your brain chemistry completely alters as a woman. It's wild. So you have to tread really lightly. And there was this woman, when I said, you got to stop buying chips, she was like 9 months, 10 months postpartum. She wasn't fresh, right? When you have women who are really fresh and really sensitive, we have a really terrible culture with honoring the postpartum. Like women go back to work so early. We don't have good breastfeeding statistics. We don't have good leave, obviously, in this country. We don't have any leave. Our easy access to good nutrition is expensive. And you have to really, it's hard. Having the awareness as to emotional needs when it comes to food too really is a huge part of that discipline as well. So this woman recently in like this little group that I lead, she was like, I'm so addicted to soda and I have my cherry Coke or whatever it was every single day. And if I don't have it, sometimes I'll go out and get one at 9 o'clock at night because I just want them so bad. And me and this other girl who's a nutritionist was like, okay, well, let's like unpack that. Like what's the need, like what need isn't being met? And we were really just talking a lot about it. I was like, do you need physical attention from your husband? Do you need a hug? Do you need a cuddle? Or do you need a bath? Do you need like what is it? And it took us like 10 minutes. She was like, oh my gosh, every night I'd have a glass of wine and then I got pregnant and I stopped drinking wine and I started having a soda. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, you had a soda every single day when you're pregnant. Jesus Christ. But okay, whatever. No judgment. But it was like, she's like, wow, I miss my wine, but I don't want to drink anymore because I feel so much better not drinking. But that's what it's replacing. And we're like, oh, that's so cool. We figured out what the trigger is. You miss your wine. You miss that relaxation at the end of the night. We're like, hey, let's just think of something a little bit better than Pepsi or whatever it was. Let's switch to, have you tried Olipop? Have you tried this? We're giving her all these suggestions. She's like, yeah, but I think now that I know it's wine, I just don't need it anymore. And we're like, okay, amazing. But she was like very aware that she was like super addicted to it and she didn't know why. She couldn't stop. So you have to tread really lightly with postpartum women because they're going to bite your face off if they get triggered because they can get mad at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
For the men listening.
I think that's great advice.
Women,
and also just painting an amazing picture of like, sometimes you don't do anything. You just have to unpack the why.
yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
better understand and utilize perspective architecture to then understand,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is what you're seeing. Here's what we're seeing. Let's better contextualize this to make a better choice, not necessarily the best choice, which then allows it to create momentum because it's a low-hanging fruit,
Totally.
which then, as you create results over the course of time with body composition or energy or how one feels, it then creates the long-term compliance. How do you create a leash or breaks on somebody navigating postpartum that is like, oh, I just want to get my body back? I was doing toes to bar before. I was doing all this midline flexion extension. And obviously you want to strive to prevent diastasis recti and the coning that kind of takes place. But psychologically, they want the thing and they want the thing bad.
Oh yeah. Now, I want to look good. postpartum. I want my abs back. I want to put on a swimsuit and not be like, oh my God, you've clearly had 3 kids. And I also want to not be in pain. I want to not pee my pants when I sneeze and cough. I want to not have any sort of diastasis, like you said, that separation of my abs. It's having awareness that slow is fast. And we do not live in a culture that recognizes the slowness, right? We are full steam, send it to 100, especially in the CrossFit athletics world. Like, they're like, I just want to get back in the gym and lifting heavy. It's like, you can, but like, you have to understand that having a baby is really a 2-year process. It is 10 months of pregnancy. It's really 10 months. And then it's like 10 months of postpartum before you're really, I should say, I think honestly, early postpartum is the full 10 months. It's like mirrors how long you were pregnant for, because your body is still healing that whole time. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot on your body, especially if you're still breastfeeding. You're producing so much for your baby. You're barely sleeping. Like, I haven't slept through the night once in 8 months. It's crazy. And it just really takes shifting your mindset. And that is very, very hard for athletes to do, because their mindset is performance. Their mindset is go, go, go. Their mindset is like, I know the work I need to do to get back, and I want to start right now. I can't tell anybody what to do. I'm not responsible for your life. But at the same time, my hope is I can encourage you to be really gentle with yourself in that first early postpartum, those first 9-10 months. Because having done that 3 times now, I'm so grateful for the slowness. It's hard. I do not like how I look for the first couple of months postpartum. Like, it's not me. It doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel comfortable. I don't like it. But I also know that it's not forever. And I think a lot of women struggle with the body image. And especially in CrossFit, they struggle with the not doing, because their identity is tied up in performance. Now you're a mom. It's a whole identity shift. And really leaning into the mom and letting go of the performance for a little bit is very, very hard.
It's so hard. And I love that you said that, because, going from having a baby, speeding through breastfeeding and postpartum recovery, and then being back in the gym, it's celebrated by people. It's so validated. You get the pat on the back. You get the, oh my gosh, you're so tough. You're so amazing. You're such an inspiration. And then when you take longer to come back, people just assume it's some sort of postpartum depression. They assume there was complexities. They're wondering why you're being lazy. The people that run the gym want your gym membership, and they want you back in the gym so that way you can be a part of the community and the culture. There's so many different angles and variables, and you and I both know movement is medicine, and there's also spiritual fitness, breathwork fitness, psychological fitness, financial fitness, different forms of adding value to your life that maybe is unfamiliar because it doesn't look like the way it did previously to having the baby.
Yeah. It's such a shift, and it's so hard because it's different for everybody, and everybody's lifestyle is different. Everybody's work is different, and it's like, you can't really prepare anyone for postpartum because it's so different for everybody. And it's like, I could tell you, well, just stop working and be a mom. It's like, well, that's literally impossible. We need a second income. That's most people, the sacrifices you have to make is really hard. But you can do, we're going to get the little guy right now. Oh,
hi, Bubba.
Oh,
hi, buddy.
All the tears. There he is.
Hello. Love being able to see you. We're talking about you, buddy.
Yeah. This is Duke.
What's up, Duke?
It's such a massive shift, and it is impossible to prepare for. So that's why the mindset work is so important, because being ready to adapt is the key. Like, that's it. You just got to be able to adapt and not live in expectation, because
For
then
sure.
you get disappointed. It's setting yourself up for disappointment. Like, I wanted to get ripped postpartum, but like, I just waited. And then I felt better 9 months postpartum. And I was like, oh, now I feel amazing. I can start working hard again. And it wasn't this like added stress on my body, you
Which is
know?
so rare, like the maturity that it takes to play in the realm of delayed gratification and
Yes.
educating and inspiring people to just pause, wait, it will get better. It will get better. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Would you say postpartum is the forgotten fourth trimester?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And
Why do
it's,
you think postpartum is so undervalued and kind of misunderstood? And what do you think most women, or what advice do you give to some of your clients as to how to prioritize the healing, the movement, and the mental well-being in conjunction with breath work and low intensity movement, as opposed to just jumping right in when they hear
yeah.
what you're saying, logically they understand it, but physically they're so triggered by what they see in the mirror or the other triggers
Yes.
that are kind of grabbing hold of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's rough. I would say it's really a societal issue, first and foremost, like women going back to work so soon. More and more corporate America, which is surprising, has better and better leave, which is awesome. Um, but like for women like me, I work for myself. I don't get paid time off. Um, so it's a challenge to really just plan financially for postpartum. That's a huge part of it, because I think the financial stress is really big for a lot of women. Um, and then creating a community of support around you, whether that's your mom or your sister planning on helping out a couple times a week, or setting up a meal train so you don't have to cook. Like, there's just lots of little things that you don't really think about, because you don't need that in your real life when you're not newly postpartum. You don't need someone to cook meals for you for 2 weeks straight. But when you have a new baby, like, no one wants to cook dinner. Like, you guys are both crushed, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so having food planned, like, it's just planning for it. Honestly, it's just planning for it. And it's just so just not ingrained in our culture to help people every single day when they have a new baby. It's just like, oh, your baby's here, congratulations. Like, let's go out to dinner. Like, let's meet up when our babies can play. Like, that's all fun, but like, women need help. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
need help. I need help with the laundry. I need help with, can someone mop my floors? Like, I just need help around the house.
Yeah,
So if you
totally.
can plan, and it's like, it seems kind of mundane, but like, the mundane stuff is the stuff that piles up, and that makes women super resentful. And then the baby starts crying and they're like, I have 900 things to do. Like, I can't do any of them,
I actually
because
think
the,
so much of life is actually lived in the mundane.
oh
We
yeah.
like to have our pseudo highlight reels, and we like to look at pictures and be reminiscing on memories and the good old days. But in reality, those good old days were filled with complexities and chores and challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all the mastering of the mundane and being enrolled in the process. And I'd also say with partners and mothers and fathers and husbands and wives, there's paralleling that needs to take place. It's not always going to be date nights and the honeymoon stage. Like, it's going to
Oh yeah.
be
No.
handing the baby off during a podcast. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding. It's going to be cleaning up throw up. It's going to be mopping the floors, trying to figure out food. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those things aren't talked about too much. And then you get so busy managing the day-to-days of life and paying bills and doing the difficulties that, like, then you have to rekindle your intimate relationship with your partner. And I don't mean that just in a sexual way. I also mean that in a cerebral way. And it's almost like you two are both different humans in a new chapter of life. What advice do you give to women that are kind of recalibrating and resetting the expectations with their partner while simultaneously trying to raise strong and empowered humans?
Um, Such a good question. That was the man right now. Um, he Gosh, okay. Whenever I meet with couples, doula clients, and I talk about postpartum with them, I just say, you guys have to remember you're on the same team. Like, that is it.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're not trying to win parenting, we're not trying to win postpartum, but like, you are on the same team. Of course, Oh, my keys, front pocket of my backpack, blue in the bedroom. We're a 1-car family right now. Pain in the butt.
Smart, less gas. And it keeps you all together frequently to build
Yes,
memories.
it does. It does. You are on the same team. Like, communication is key. I find that women have a really hard time asking for help, and I don't know why that is, but postpartum really forced me to ask for help, like, so much so that I made it a daily practice. Like, because I was so uncomfortable with it that I would just be like, can you go get me water? And he's like, yeah. But I'm like, I can go get water, but I'm comfortable on the couch right now. Like, I'm going to ask my husband to get me my water. So stupid, but kind of not if you're not used to asking for help. It is so important to get in the practice of asking for help from the person who wants to help you or is there for you, so that when you really need it, you guys are just up and ready for each other. And it's not to say that arguments don't happen, or like you might get irritated with each other or piss each other off. But at the end of the day, you're not going to bed angry at each other. You're not waking up angry at each other. And you are really trying to help each other. Like, we tag team all day long. And we stay up really late because that's when we have just time for us, you know? Our kids go to bed at 8 and we stay up till like 11, sometimes 11:30, which is pretty stupid when you have a new baby. But it's when we can just chill and focus on being us again. And so remembering that you're on the same team. So one of the big things that we do when we have a new baby is we sleep separately. And I tell all my clients, I'm like, listen, it might seem weird. The boomers get uncomfortable when you tell them you're sleeping in separate bedrooms because they're like, oh God, what's going to happen? It's like, no, I'm just trying to sleep. I'm like, when he gets a full night's sleep, he has, ever since we started dating, he wakes up and he makes me coffee and breakfast every single morning, has barely ever missed a day. And my mom has said, like, oh, just you wait. You know, it's one of those, just wait. We'll see if that lasts forever. And Michael's like, that's just what I do. You know, that's one of my roles. And when we have a new baby, I wake up all night with him and Michael sleeps and wakes up and makes me breakfast and coffee. It's something I know I can rely on. It's something that makes me happy and makes me want to help out around the house where I can. And so we don't have any sort of resentments like, oh, who's making breakfast today? I thought you were making breakfast today. It seems so silly, but it's like, this is our non-negotiable. He sleeps.
It's also
he makes me
setting
breakfast
expectations from the onset. Do you find yourself, though, like subconsciously creating resentment in the crave and the want for sleep?
Absolutely not. It's so weird. Like, because this is my job right now. And sometimes I wake up and he didn't have a good night's sleep because it's like, oh, I stayed up till midnight listening to a podcast. That's when I get mad. I'm like, well, that's a you problem, and you still need to help me out, you know? It's so rare that happens. And
hopefully he'll do that to listen to this podcast, though.
He is so, like, we're so good with like our daily roles in the house that I really have no resentment on the sleep that he gets and that I don't get, because I know it gets better. You know, when you have a baby and you're still nursing and you're taking care of the baby 24 hours a day, like, that is your job. And I think that's another huge societal issue is women going back to like corporate 9 to 5s so early, is like, they need sleep. Like, you can't function, you know? And so it's really challenging. But to go back to your original question, creating those expectations and those boundaries and those desires with each other. If my husband's like, okay, well, if I'm making your breakfast and coffee every morning, I make dinner, you know, and he helps with the big kids for dinner time, you know, whatever they need help with, because they're freaking crazy and bouncing off the walls at that time. We really balance it out and make it work. And so just remembering that you guys are on the same team. When you have a new baby, it's not like kiss a sweet night, sleep good night, but it kind of is. And it's just accepting that that's what it is, not resenting it, and doing what you can the next day. That's the most important thing. Just doing everything you can.
That's cool. What advice do you give to women around breastfeeding? Because obviously it's going to take a lot of energy. From what I understand, there's a huge caloric expenditure, which means you probably need to bring your calories up a little bit. And that's definitely challenging when you're like, dang, I just gained all this weight. Now I'm supposed to eat all this over here too, just to satisfy the the energy requirement for nursing. How do you play with that psychologically and physically with yourself and others?
It's a lot.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey.
The most demanding part of breastfeeding is just how nonstop it is in the beginning. Like babies eat like every 2 hours. It's so crazy. So crazy. And you're just like, I feel like we just did this 15 minutes ago, but you're hungry again. Okay. The best advice I would say is have your baby sleep with you or sleep next to you. I'm going to bring this down again. It's crawling around.
Get it, Duke.
So that you're not up and walking to a little nursery 7 times a night and exhausting yourself out. That makes a big difference. Either in the bed with you or in a little bassinet next to you. Unmedicated births most often lead to better breastfeeding outcomes. Hate to break it to the hospital folk. No, not to say you can't have an amazing breastfeeding experience with a hospital birth. Most women birth in hospitals. But when you are unmedicated, you don't have the drugs in your body, your literal brain connection to the breast, to the milk production is stronger right off the bat. Makes sense. You don't have opioids in your system. Like your brain's functioning better. So going for an unmedicated birth or an out of hospital birth is going to set you up for a great success in breastfeeding. Minimizing medical interventions for your baby postpartum is going to lead to better breastfeeding. So really, again, it's the pause. Do I need to do all these things with my baby the day they're born, first 2 days of life, first 3 weeks of life? Or can we just pause and really honor the postpartum bubble where my baby is on my chest pretty much 24/7 and we are exchanging the oxytocin and we are just living in that mother-baby bond. Oh gosh, he found my glasses. Hang on. There we go. Like disruption is going to lead to more stress, and that is going to lead to women stopping breastfeeding earlier. Like that's just what it is. And stress can look like anything. Oh my God, I have to cook dinner. Oh my God, I have to go back to work. Like the in-laws are coming over. Like I'm very, I have no filter. So if my parents are over and I need them to leave, I'm like, you guys got to get out of here right now. Most people have a really hard time with that. And so it's really just like understanding your boundaries, really creating a cocoon postpartum. And so when people come to visit you, like if you feel uncomfortable asking people to leave, you're putting a sign on your front door that says like, please keep visits up to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So that they know.
So good at creating expectations, which is amazing. Yes. And also sharing what you need, right? Like not just bottling it up where it becomes a huge outburst later. and holding space for the adaptability and the chaos, which is part of the magic, because you're going to get roughly 18 years of this and then it's going to be done and you're going to miss it. And so I think cherishing those moments is incredibly special for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the controversial topic now of vaccines for children, and seeing the myocarditis and seeing some of the things associated with modern medicine, and then also the judgment that it comes along with that of like, are you a vaxxer? Are you an anti-vaxxer? Oh, that tells me which side of the political stream you're on.
Oh, totally. Totally. Oh, it's been a journey for us, really. Buddy. I would say I was hesitant to vaccinate our first, because I was lucky that I was around a lot of moms before having babies, and a lot of them were just very open that they didn't vaccinate their kids. Mm-hmm. Being at Deuce and getting like the Venice hippie moms. Okay, buddy, you gotta not play with this one. Here you go. So I was just kind of like, that is crazy. You're not vaccinated. And like Lindsay, who I learned a lot from, she would always talk about how horrible vaccines were. And I'm just like, what are you talking? Like, where are you getting this information? You know, this was like, again, 2012, 2013, where I'm just like kind of with it in terms of home birth stuff, but like not really fully radicalized, I should say, when it comes to
you
the
knew
medical.
What you knew, and like you didn't know what you didn't know, and it felt normal, especially with oh, you can't go to school unless you have these vaccines.
Yes,
you have this fear-based knowledge that felt normal in the realm of us trusting doctors, until we started to peak our eyebrows and be like, oh, maybe we should question some of the science a little bit.
Oh yeah. So with our first, we did a lot of Googleable research, which you know isn't going to get you very far. And we were really hesitant about like combinations of vaccines with antibiotics or Tylenol. Just like understanding like a toxic load is like what you want to really be worried about, which is still very legit and real. But we were like, we don't know if vaccines are the problem or if it's like the gut microbiome, and like antibiotics are actually causing way more issues with kids, which again, legit and real. But I do believe in antibiotics when needed. And so we did give our first some shots, not all of them. Like we didn't give him hepatitis B. I'm like, that's an STD for like drug addicts. Like, we don't need to give them that. Then they do the hepatitis B shot day one of life. The more and more I've learned about it over the years, I mean, it has astronomically toxic loads of aluminum in it. And they're giving that to every single baby day one of life. So thank God we didn't do that one. And there was maybe one or two more we didn't do, but we pretty much followed the schedule with our first, and he was fine. He had one little episode looking back. In the moment, I didn't really make the connection. But it was scary. I like picked him up, and he was like a floppy baby. And it was freaky. He was like a noodle. So the moment that really changed everything for many people with similar was the lockdowns happening. And I was still really hesitant about all the shots with our son. And I was pregnant with our daughter at the time that the lockdown happened. I literally announced my pregnancy, and the lockdown was announced like 2 days later. It was crazy. And we were in LA. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to watch everything that the news tells you not to watch when it comes to vaccine propaganda, because I just feel so strongly that this COVID thing is like a major shit show. Like the moment the lockdown happened, me and my husband were like, no, something's not right.
Didn't pass the smell test, and inevitably wanted, at the very least, like relating to art and that painting that's behind you, for example. I think that's Caroline's work.
Oh, it's not, but it looks like it.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting to there is like, if you're going to look at a painting, you want to see the whole picture. You want to see both sides of the coin.
Yes.
If you want to trade places with somebody, you have to trade your whole life, not just the good parts. And it's like, okay, you're giving us this lens. Fine, cool. But I also want to see the whole picture. And if you're not talking about health and wellness, at the very least, like it makes me uncertain and does not pass my smell test.
Oh, 100%. Oh my gosh. I literally have such a wild boy in here right now. He's going to knock this light over. Come here, little guy. I'm going to bring it closer to me. Okay. Yeah, so the moment COVID lockdown happened, we were like, this is so sketch. And we like very quickly realized like no one in our family really aligned with us, and that was really hard. Our family was like, yeah, I guess we'll see you when the mayor says we can. And we're like, oh, wait, what? So that was brutal. But we watched everything that they told you not to watch. And it really opened our eyes because I was like, this isn't propaganda. This is just like literal facts and information that they don't tell you in the doctor's office and you can't get on major news platforms. Like you can actually find a lot of this stuff nitty gritty on like CDC websites. If you look at all the studies that they do publish, you can find reactions and whatnot. And we were just kind of like, this is interesting. Then we started looking into, okay, well, let's look at every disease they're vaccinating you against. And what's the treatment protocol for these? What's the survival rate? What's the actual like severity of these things? Like measles right now is hot, like because RFK won, or he's, in charge now. And of course there's a measles outbreak in Texas. It's like, oh, please give me a break, right? Like, first of all, how do you know? I mean, and I haven't really been paying attention to the news in any way. But I'm just like, yeah, okay. They're just trying to scare you. It's all fear-based information. Health is not come in a syringe, in my opinion. And so if we look at the actual data of, okay, well, what's the severity of the disease? What's the actual treatment protocol? What can I do naturally, holistically at home to help me get better? Like, isn't that what we used to do when we were kids and like our parents were kids? Like, people got measles all the time when our parents were kids, and you had a little rash, you had a fever, you stayed home, or you had a measles party and got it out. All your friends got it, and then everyone was better. Mm-hmm. The death rate of measles is so low, and if you high dose vitamin A, you can essentially cure measles without calling it a cure. Mm-hmm. It's like understanding the real risks of these diseases, and then understanding the real risks of vaccines,
and also integrating protocols that have more reward than risk versus 100%. Taking a synthetic dose of a vaccine that has potentially more risk than reward. It might fix it faster, but then it comes with all these side effects that are in the fine print or said really fast on a commercial. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, there shouldn't be incentive for people to get COVID, and the integration of monetization. Like, if you want to see ventilators and things like that, and you're rewarding hospitals for a diagnosis of COVID, mm-hmm. that is, in my opinion, unacceptable. You're skewing, if you're going to have a reward system, like if you want to predict behavior, have an incentive. If there's a reward system for a COVID diagnosis, that also just seems completely inappropriate to me, at least from my little observation over here.
It was crazy. It was really crazy. And honestly, it was one of the main reasons we left LA. I mean, we were planning on leaving LA anyway, but COVID was the final straw. But vaccines, like you said, if you want your kid to go to school, they need to have all the shots in California. And they do not allow medical exemptions unless your child has had something like 8 adverse vaccine reactions or something mm-hmm. insane like that. Hopefully that changes over the next couple of years. That would be amazing. But that was one of the main reasons why we left LA. It was like, we're not going to give our kids shots that we don't believe in or agree with just so they can go to school. Like, that seems insane. And in Texas, personal belief exemptions are very much respected here. So that's cool.
That is cool.
We homeschool our kids now, so it's a non-issue. But it's gotten so crazy to the point where even having a conversation around preventative care, like to circle it back to the beginning, is like, well, what do you even know about that? It's like,
you're a conspiracy theorist, and then it's personal accusations as opposed to having respect in the messy middle.
Sorry, I don't eat flaming hot Cheetos for lunch, and I'm healthier than you. Let's start there. I don't know. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. It's just discipline, and it's just taking responsibility for your health and not putting the responsibility of your health on someone out there who went to medical school funded by Rockefeller money uh, who wants to inject you with meds every
What
six
was
months.
wild to me too was like, oh, you're going to provide judgment and skepticism and negative energy and, shadow ban and all the social media things that came with it based on not getting jabbed. But then when I'm walking past you in the grocery store and I see what's in your cart and I've got
Yeah.
grass-fed beef and eggs and trying to eat the rainbow to have micronutrients and nutrient density to satisfy the movement requirements of the day, to love and serve the world and be useful. And then I look
Mm-hmm.
inside yours and it's high fructose corn syrup in every single ingredient associated with what's in your cart, but then you're pointing the finger at me. It just felt ass backwards and fucking crazy, to
Oh
be
yeah.
totally honest.
It
Um,
was so crazy.
how have you developed, as we start to wrap things up, how have you developed the courage to kind of be pretty vocal about some of these things in social media where you can be judged and you can be bullied and you can be, it's easy for these keyboard warriors to kind of throw things your way.
You know, I guess it's just who I am. I was a really intense people pleaser. I told my sister that recently. She was like, I've never seen that side of you. I'm like, well, you're my sister. You never got that side of me.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I cared so much what people thought about me when I was young, in high school and in college. I was like a little more off the wall in college, because that was like my first real taste of freedom. But I still really cared about like getting a job and getting, into corporate America and whatever. And like, honestly, joining CrossFit really opened my eyes to the world of wellness, not just health. Like, what's healthy? It's like what's actually like optimizing and fitness, the sickness, wellness, fitness. I love that image. And like, I got really into fitness, and it was just such a new perspective on how to take care of myself, was like optimization rather than just like coasting, and like just kind of like in robot zombie mode. Um, that I'm just like, I don't really care what people think of me anymore because I feel so good. Like, I must be doing something right. I'm very open to being wrong. I love being wrong sometimes. It doesn't feel good, but I'm like, I learned something. Like when I learned about vaccines, I was like, holy shit, this just shook up my whole world, because I never thought I'd be a mom who would not vaccinate my kids. Like, that was just so weird to me. So I'm not afraid of being bullied and harassed. I've experienced it all over the last 5 years, and from the people closest to me, which is the crazy part. Like, I get the trolls, of course, but like the people who are closest to me send me the nastiest messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you know what? Cool. Guess I'm never gonna talk to you again. Like, maybe it's my Gemini nature. We can be pretty cold hearted, but I just don't care. Like, I'm very private about my kids online. I don't post them, so I feel good that I don't like expose my family life to a lot of like potential danger. I rarely talk about like the yoga studio I work at, because I'm like, I don't want some weirdo finding me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I I speak because I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I have been given this voice to use, and not speaking up feels wrong. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't even really feel like it's like a confidence that grew. Like, I was afraid to speak up and now I'm not. It's always just been like, yeah, well, I'm going to say it, because if I don't, who will?
Yeah. And you've overcome that challenge of people pleasing. You've realized that it honors your
Yes.
truth. It aligns with your family dynamic, and it led to me becoming a fanboy and reaching out to our mutual friends and then being like, I
Yeah.
gotta chat with her. I gotta have her on the show.
Yeah. It's been fun. I'm grateful for the experience. I've had a lot of people in my close circle never talk to me anymore. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Guess you were a conditional friend. I don't do
Totally.
that. So, okay,
Totally.
bye.
I think that's
You know?
great maturity. And I love chopping it up. I love your realness, your rawness. Um, I think you just got to keep going. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that can use your services and use the expertise that you have behind, based on what you picked up and put down over the last 15 years, as you
Totally.
mentioned. I mean, even the small little cue of vitamin A for measles is
Yeah.
super cool. And if you could leave people with a little bit of advice from your doula experience, from your health and wellness experience, what would you like to share?
Oh, that's such a good question. Honestly, family is the most important thing. And yes, my family, like my parents and my sisters, I include in that, but like your family that you are creating, you know, whenever you have children, is going to so drastically change your life that it is the only thing that mattered is keeping your family unit together. And yes, shit happens and people get divorced. I'm not saying like I don't want I don't want someone to be like, well, my husband abused me, so we had. That's not what I'm talking about. Your safe family unit is the most important thing. Haters, extended family, friends, whatever, important, super important part of your life, but not the most important part of your life. Doing everything in your power to control the safety and health and wellness of your little family that you're creating is the most important thing. Doing anything that doesn't align with your family values is a no. You know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if someone tells me and my husband, in order to meet their new baby, we got to put masks on, we're like, yeah, we'll see you when your baby's 3 months old. Like, we're just not doing that. And it might seem really petty, but like, I'm not gonna play your dumbass games, you know? You have to have such strong family values with the family you are creating that everything you do is going to fall in line. And like, I feel like that's where the confidence comes from too. Like, we don't do things as a family that aren't just a yes across the board.
Yeah. If it's not a fuck yeah, then
We
it's a
don't have
no.
time for that. Yeah, like we don't have time for that. I don't have time to be like, okay, yeah, like we'll totally like I can't even think of an example because we don't do that. Um so just living in such solid alignment with your partner as you build your family is just going to change the game. And that's what I mean when I say like you guys are on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can create a family bond that strong in your convictions and your values and your faith, whatever, you're going to have a great life. I really
That's so
believe that.
beautiful.
Even among tragedy and bad shit,
Totally.
you know?
I love that. Emily, where can people find you?
Okay, I am pretty much only on Instagram at Emily Stanwyck. I do have a website, but like that's just where people can sign up for the classes I offer. But Instagram is the place to find me at Emily Stanwyck. So thank you so much for having me.
Today was fun. It was cool playing ping pong, chopping it up, and better understanding your story and giving people access to the tools that you provide to the world.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I teach a birth education class. I teach a doula training. I offer in-person doula services in Texas, so hit me up on Instagram for any of that.
Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Emily today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time. Thank you, Emily.